discussing environmental sustainability as a pathway to peace in Congo and the African Great Lakes region. And you're going to see a few things in this presentation or in this panel. We have a couple of panelists, very distinguished panelists who are here with us. And I'm going to actually share this with y'all, but before we do that, I wanted to share one thing and honor the work that, that John Moore has done to keep up the tradition of Africa Awareness Week, which began early 2000s or 1998 with the History Department. At the time, it was Dr. Augustine Kone in the History Department. Dr. Cynthia Hewitt joined, and also Dr. Larego was a part of it also at the time, and Nicholas. And I'll be brief. Try to be brief. I was going to say.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can keep it around, but if you see something, thank you. All right. So sociology took it up. Dr. Cynthia Hewitt, who's still here with us today, and Dr. Hewitt placed much more of a diasporic focus on the event. So Dr. Hewitt helped to create what we call several initiatives. She helped to create MPAGE, the Morehouse Pan-African Global Experience Program. That's the basis of our African diasporic study abroads that we're going to places like Costa Rica, places like Belize and other spots like that, Cuba, all of those, Ghana, those are parts of that program. But she also created the Environmental Brigade, which was like a tree planting brigade. And you'll see that idea present itself in this panel as well. So John, I want to just thank you for doing your work and for leading us into this project of actually collaborating with the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor on Africa. Because the research projects, the key thing is we're actually recruiting students who are interested in creating research projects connected to the African diaspora. I want you to think creatively. Don't think that your major is business, you don't have anything to do with Africa. There's more economic development that's going to happen in Africa than any other place on the planet. So if you are serious about business, if you're serious about understanding society, actually engage in some of these projects and you'll get a chance to travel to the areas. You'll get a chance to, to basically to get some really good research experience as well. I'm excited to see the students who are gathered here today. This is Noah Collier, Africana Studies major. We have some students, of course, from our hip hop class. And again, that's connected. It's all connected. But we're going to go ahead and begin, just in the interest of time, by introducing our panelists. And we are missing a couple of people, but I'm going to still introduce the people who are supposed to be on the panel and who are here. Starting with Mr. Samuel Yagase Bayome. Samuel Yagase is a grassroots leader mobilizing rural communities for justice and dignity in the Congo Basin and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Right now, he's in Kinshasa. That's why he's not here. And their power is like Morehouse's power. It's off and on. Do you see any similarities, continuities? You think we don't have anything to do with Africa? Dude, we are dealing with some of the same developmental challenges. Let's just be honest. So he's a co-founder and coordinator for GOVA, the Group of Village Organizations for Autonomous Development, which is based in Isangi in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In 1992, GOVA formed as a collective initiative between the community, individuals, and traditional leaders for a collective initiative between the community and intellectuals and traditional leaders for autonomy and self-determination after experiencing pain, disrespect, and broken promises by the international aid organizations. So the main goal of GOVA is to build something by Black people for Black people in the country of Congo. And of course, y'all are probably familiar with the colonial legacy of Congo. Anybody remember or knows who colonized Congo?
Belgium versus
Belgium, absolutely, Belgium. By the time they got their independence in 1960, Belgium, along with the United States government, helped to overthrow their first democratically elected prime minister, Patrice Emery Lumumba. Cameron, I might ask you to be the parliamentarian if you would do the door almost exclusively, so because you're gonna have to actually moderate. Welcome, welcome. How y'all doing? All right. So next we have Mr. James Patterson. And lastly, I'm going to introduce our moderator, Mr. James Patterson, the third, is a native of Zion, Illinois, a rural agricultural community, which fostered his deep connection with nature and Pan-Africanism at an early age. His research and work addresses critical socioeconomic and environmental issues like land management and heirs property by connecting people to land, identity, culture, politics, and public policy using GIS, which is, help me out.
Geographical Information System.
Geographical Information Systems. So we have a site license for ArcGIS here. We are actually going to use a part of that in your class, but come on in your class as we actually create research projects. So please lean into that process. And again, join one of the research groups. Don't think it's not connected with you. And it really won't take that much time, but it will take some time. Not that much though. His academic journey began with a BS, Bachelor of Science in Forestry Science from Alabama A&M University, a graduate certificate in Bioecology, Management, and Technology, and Master's in Rural Sociology in 2018 from Auburn University, where he conducted impactful research on heirs property and its socioeconomic impacts. Lots of honors here. Subsequently, Mr. Patterson, Brother Patterson, I say Professor Patterson, he's worked with the USDA Southern Research Station with FEMA for 10 years, gaining invaluable experience as a fire ecologist, planner, disaster management specialist, and environmental scientist. He has 17 plus years of GIS data science and management, and he is a tremendous resource for us here at Morehouse. We want to keep him busy and actually make him a part of that Morehouse community as we build out some research projects as well, okay? So you'll see this question about how does GIS, how can it be actually employed in Congo to assist Congolese people as well. Last but not least, we have our honored moderator, Mr. Tristan St. John, who is a senior, graduating senior in psychology and Africana Studies minor. Mr. St. John is an ideal student. It's like whenever I've asked him to help with something, he's always been there, and he stays really, really busy. I'm not going to say everything that he's doing, but I'm going to mention at least 3 things that are critical. And it's like, I can go on and talk about more. First, he really worked heavily with the Morehouse Memory, Movement, and Justice Initiative from Africana Studies and English and Humanities. What we did was to work with Gullah Geechee communities to document, to learn from, to listen to Gullah Geechee people as they actually are trying to preserve their land and advance their culture. I forgot the estimate. Tristan, you probably would know it, but Dr. Claiborne mentions it all the time. She talks about the tourism industry in the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor as something in the billions. Do you remember exactly how much?
I don't, but that definitely checks out.
Yeah.
Billions, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking about a real economy or, economic driver. So the second thing he's been involved with is in the Morehouse Education Behind Bars initiative. I know I'm probably misnaming it, led by Dr. Kipton Jensen. And then also Tristan has worked with us out of the Andrew Young Center with the Maroon Talema project, which is essentially a collaborative project looking at how Gullah Geechee and Congolese history and culture and current affairs, compare and connect with each other. So I want to thank my panelists, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. St. John as we begin. And what you'll see also is we have this basically a PowerPoint that leads us through the discussion. Our Congolese guest, Mr. Bayome Yagase, Samuel Yagase, is not able to join us. And we also have one other colleague who may be joining us in the audience who's looking at climate finance. That's another possibility for, especially for folks who are in economics and business. If you're interested in learning about climate finance, we'll have a partnership with University of California, Berkeley in the Energy Resources Group. So please join me in welcoming our panelists, and please engage, listen, and wait for the question and answer session after we go through their presentations, after they share their research. Thank you, gentlemen.
So again, thank you, Dr. Livingston, for that intro. I appreciate it. Just to reiterate, my name is Tristan St. John. I'm a graduate of senior psychology major here at Morehouse. I've also had the pleasure of working, like Dr. Livingston said, with the Maroon to Lehman Fellow Project. And specifically while I was working on that project, I had the opportunity of creating a story map. And my story map was focused on understanding land loss throughout the African diaspora. This includes the causes, the effects, what are potential solutions to land loss throughout the African diaspora. Particularly, I focused on 3 areas that I used as microcosms to understand how land loss affects us. And I used the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor, otherwise known as the Low Country. I used the West Indies, and I used the Congo as well. And I believe that understanding the parallels and differences between these issues affect the African diaspora, understanding these issues which affect the African diaspora collectively, help us collaborate and also build collective solutions and African solidarity. So with that being said, I just wanted to take a moment to ask Dr. Patterson, or excuse me, Professor Patterson, how can the GeoJustice Project, your consulting firm, leverage GIS to shed light on social justice efforts and the intricate history of Black and Indigenous land ownership, farming, and applying this skill set to the methodology to the Democratic Republic of Congo, understanding its history and things like that?
So thank you for the question. I think so. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of the GeoJustice Project, and our motto is that mapping equity matters, right? And so there's a multiplicity in that. When we look at one of the biggest things we're talking about is land loss, right? So Dr. Livingston mentioned heirs property. Land, we actually own, who actually owns that land. And that's a nationwide or a universal issue that's going on. So there are a lot of different things, that are occurring in Congo right now. One example is GIS can be used to create spatial analysis. So if we're looking at healthcare facilities, if we're looking at schools, we're looking at water resources, we're looking at farmers, what kind of crops do they actually own and where are those crops actually located? Where are the water resources that are close to them?
Hello?
So you want to give it just, it'll probably take me 30 seconds.
Go ahead, no problem. No problem. For those who are joining us, and hopefully, John, you can tell us if you can hear us.
We can hear you now. Your audio was out for a moment.
Oh, okay. So Professor Patterson is joining on Zoom, so you should be able to hear him much more clearly in just a second.
Perfect.
Okay. And for our folks who are here on Zoom, if you could go ahead and you can mute yourself for now, and then we'll have a chance for question and answer and discussion. And if y'all would, please don't be afraid of coming down front. This is, a critical moment in African history. Don't be shy. We need everybody on the front row, not on the sidelines. So come on in, please come on in. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. And while James is doing that, I'm just going to go back to it's just an earlier piece in the presentation. And James, just let me know when you're ready. Again, when we look at what's happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo, we're facing a significant, of course, environmental challenge, but also a human rights challenge, where we're seeing deforestation, caused by large-scale logging, small-scale agriculture, artisanal and corporate mining, which severely impacts most, of course, vast tropical rainforests, which are considered a very important lung or aspect of what helps to clean the Earth's atmosphere, along with the Amazon rainforest. James, let me know whenever you're ready. Okay.
So one of the things you mentioned, can y'all hear me now? A little bit better. Can you hear me?
Your mic is off?
All right. What about now?
Yes, go ahead. And we'll
Okay.
Go ahead.
Still no echo. Okay. So one of the main issues you mentioned was deforestation. And so I'm a forester. That's my first degree. That's how I learned GIS. So one of the main issues with, like, what do forests provide for us? oxygen. Somebody said houses,
Paper.
doors, paper, wood products, food, clothes, shelter. One of the main things that forests provide is like our water. Forests have clean water. They act as filtration systems to all the toxins that come from pretty much human activities. So when you remove one of those things is climate change, right? Forests, provide us shade, but a lot of these gases that are being released into the climate, forests are filtering the air and actually, cleaning the air and reducing that the greenhouse gases. When deforestation occurs, then as you start development, it it will it actually makes the sun reflect off of those hot surfaces like concrete, and it increases the temperature, and it also affects the general population, adding to susceptibility to disease. And in some of these developing countries, like places like Africa, where you already have, or even here in America, where you have communities of color are predisposed to a lot of health issues, that those the response from climate change is a greater susceptibility to things like COVID, and which increases death rates and things like that as well too. So forests provide a lot of human services, is what we call them. So what you can do in GIS, which I'll pull it up in a second, you can actually pull up what we call cover types, land cover types. So if an area is traditionally a forest, and then it's being converted to agricultural land, which is then being converted to developmental land, we can track that change over time, and we can also see, well, who's doing that? Is it a corporation? Is it benefiting our people? And then we can actually look at health disparities. We can look at social economics and see the actual change and impact that it's actually having with our people, and be able to track that change over time. So me and Tristan were just talking, the benefit to you all as being students is a lot of this data may not exist in Africa. It may not exist in the Congo, but you have the ability with a GIS system to actually create it. What you all have here in RGS Online is a database where you can go create these layers and actually store them. And if there's no data that exists in the world, you all will be the leading experts and the only organization with a database with that data available, and data is currency. So you have a great opportunity, to come out and do this work and be, the pioneers of it, so it's one really good example, one answer to your
Absolutely,
question.
absolutely. And I appreciate you for that answer. And us being able to look at, I would say, the more far side of how our energized and so impactful is very important. I kind of want to just focus a little bit and ask about the socioeconomic side. So how can GIS help us improving infrastructure planning such as roads, energy distribution, and urban development to support economic growth in the Congo?
So, really good question. GIS allows planners to access current infrastructure and optimize new developments based on population growth and economic activity. So, an example here is I used to be the GIS administrator in Clayton County. We build GIS systems. How many of y'all are familiar with Google Maps, Uber Eats, all of these different platforms, right? That's what they're doing. They're taking a roles layer from the city of Atlanta or from Clayton County, and they're using it to say, okay, Tristan is on campus at Morehouse. I want to get to the airport, which is actually in Clayton County. Tell me how I can get there. The GIS system looks at the two locations. It uses the road layer, and then it says, all right, this is the best route for you based on the time of day, based on the week, because it's pulling in traffic information and data. So a lot of developing countries, they don't have Belize is an example of that right now, right? They're in developmental stages, so they don't know who necessarily owns the land, but they're interested in working with people to help them develop that. So one of those things, they have it on paper and the office, government office, and I'm sure someone in Congo has it on paper in the office. But one of the things limiting access to information does is it doesn't give, in America, one time when we couldn't learn, it was illegal to teach people like us to read and write. Information currency is information is the currency. So the fact that you don't know, look at the Congo, who owns within a region, the land, it inhibits you from being able to contact the landowner and say, hey, you need help with something, let me help you. So GIS system, not only can we go into the Congo, we can take GIS devices, GPS that are like the size of our cell phone. And actually now you can use your cell phone. There's something called ArcGIS field map. And I've built mobile apps. Take your phone, say start recording. And you literally go throughout just ride on the four-wheeler and start mapping out the actual roads with the names on them. Because the names are important. If I'm trying to get to you, I need to know what roads I'm on to tell you where I'm at. And then you map out the road system. And then now we can all class look at the road systems and say, hey, on these roads, we need houses. And those roads are all the lakes and rivers and creeks are. And then you can also add the information to who owns the actual land. So that's a big part of the infrastructure part. If the data doesn't exist, we don't have to wait on somebody else to do it for us. We can actually go out and map it ourselves and create that data.
James, I'm sorry to just add, in our Go-Geechee class, we have a project where students are mapping all of the Go-Geechee communities in each county. And I know we only have like 8 students in there, so we're talking about a lot of work. And some of it we may be able to be on the ground, but we'll be using some type of technology like that to at least map some portion of those communities. And the fact that we don't have those mapped here in America, again, when you think about the situation in Africa, in the African diaspora, again, that's a part of that, what needs to develop. We have to know where we are in order to really understand. You can't even understand economic development in rights, but be quiet and just appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that. And whenever we can, and also the good thing is we'll be partnering. It's not just Morehouse, but we'll be partnering with universities in Congo, and especially once we get peace in the east. So that's mainly Goma. That's like our main base. It hurts. It hurts because I know we have Congolese folks here. Any Congolese members? Oh, and where are you from?
Johnson.
The Johnson. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But this is like we're doing this work, and we're not doing it alone. And it's not like we're saving someone. We're working together because we have a lot to teach each other. We have a lot to do. Go ahead.
So, thank you for that answer. That was a really great answer. You were say something?
Just to add to what you were saying about, so the Gullah Geechee goes to one of the really amazing things about GIS in that area is, you can do drone mapping. So in that area, my former professor at Auburn has worked to look at reparations and the way that it was proposed. Because in the Gullah Geechee Coast, there's areas where they're barely holding on to it. They only own about 1% of it left. But there's all these resorts that have come in. So where you can map all the resorts and then you can associate the income that they're for revenue generating. And on the flip side of that, he suggested, he and a colleague, that at least 1% of the revenue that is being generated by colonizers is then paid back to the Gullah Geechee every year, whether that's quarterly, monthly. But you can look at the land loss again, because in those areas, a way that you can do it is you can go back and look at the owners when they actually became owners. A lot of the white families who now have taken that land, and then I'll start dating it back to them to actually making sure they get paid back from that time. But again, GIS is, a really instrumental part of that, but it gives you the actual foundation data, to actually tax people.
Maybe we make a lot of be quiet.
And I think that's a really important aspect. And switching socioeconomic tip a little bit, this next question I feel like goes geared towards more communities. I think it's very important. I think it also applies to urban communities, especially Western as well. And that is, how can GIS help in improving, or excuse me, in what ways can GIS use tracking and measure the view food insecurity, and agricultural challenges in rural communities.
So I think going back to land loss too is a big part of that. So not only is again heirs property the leading cause of land loss and persistent poverty, but the, the next part of that is food insecurity, right? So if you think about rural communities, most like where does all the land where our food comes from? It's typically in rural communities. So the fact that rural communities just don't know necessarily how to efficiently farm, nowadays, uh, that's a big problem, and a lot of those communities lack access. So a good example is FEMA, for instance. A lot of times disasters come through FEMA. These people tend to not necessarily have records, land records to say, hey, grandma passed away, but I'm her heir. So FEMA would come in and say, you're not the owner of this land. Well, my grandma is the owner though, and she's passed. Well, you didn't, use the formal process to transfer the land, so you don't have the title, so if you're not you can't be a recipient of this FEMA dollar. So when Hurricane Katrina occurred, there was about 50% over 25, it was about 25 million of our people who could not receive disaster refund relief funds. And so what that did turned around and made it property that was then abandoned, that was then acceptable for people to come in and buy it with pennies on a dollar. So even that, even if it just served as a record of who owned the land at one period of time, that alone is monumental for our people, to then be able to go back, um, get that, to be able to get that money that's owed to us. And then since then, that was one of the things we used with GIS to be able to show the economic disparity. And so FEMA about 2 or 3 years ago changed that law federally. Well, they changed it in Louisiana, but then they changed it federally nationwide. So, as an example, it didn't come out as like this social economic justice is what they didn't come out and like make it a badge of honor, but they did acknowledge that it's causing disparities. And the fact that, GIS was able to do that is an example of what we can then go do globally in places like the Congo, because again, a big part of it is policy. And I think that's something that you all as students really need to pay attention to. We talk about what it is we want to experience how we want to live freely. Policy is attached to that. We have to make sure that we have political leaders, that reflect our values because y'all pay taxes every day, everything that you buy. So you need to make sure that the policies reflect the beliefs of the people who are represented here. And I think the last part, what was the question again?
It was
Which
in
one?
what ways can contributing to tracking and mitigating food insecurity and agricultural challenges in rural communities? It was what ways it's helped that.
So make sure I covered it. GIS maps, soil quality, rainfall patterns, crop health. We use remote sensing, spatial analysis to do that. So we can also help with precision agriculture, where farmers receive insights on planting times, irrigation strategies, and even pest control. And it also helps governments predict and respond to droughts and food shortages, among other things. So it's very precise. We don't have to guess. If there's an issue, we can tell you exactly where that issue is and how, best to address it. An example of that is rainfall. We actually can map rainfall, and that happens right now. There's some called raw stations. They're remote. I can't think of the aid, but they're remote weather stations. So a lot of times, as farmers, Benjamin Banneker, being the person who created the Farmer's Almanac, and actually Susan Moore, and GIS itself was created by a sister. I can't think of her first name at the moment. Her last name was West, aka she was a sister. She created geographical positioning system for the Navy. So the movie Figures, that's about her. So literally now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that was built off the backs of one of our sisters. So it's really important for us to understand, to overstand that. But yeah, they actually track rainfall. And that rain, if you know you're growing a crop that needs 4 inches of rainfall every month, and you only got two last month, then you know, all right, I need to turn on my irrigation system. And now the irrigation system is self-watering. So it knows when it hasn't had enough rain. You can do that in your yard right now. You just, tell it it'll turn on every day. So
And to just shift the focus back a little bit specifically on Congo, how do you think GIS can be used to monitor and combat illegal mining and environmental and social consequences in that region specifically?
GIS and satellite imagery help detect unauthorized mining activities. We can track land degradation, and then you can assess pollution in rivers and ecosystems. So governments and non-government organizations use GIS to pinpoint hotspots of illegal mining and enforce regulations while working with affected communities to help develop sustainable alternatives. An example of that is here we use GIS to run crime analysis. That's a crime analysis. The crime is illegal mining activities. So typically, what we do is we use this software. It's called Planet, and it monitors the Earth 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No, I don't have to call. Hey, Noah, you watching? The system is watching it for you. The moment a tree is cut down, because it monitors in 3 foot accuracy, it knows trees bigger than that. It knows that the canopy of the forest was affected, and it'll tell you, hey, in the northwest quadrant, and give you the coordinates. Hey, there was 60 trees that were removed, and it's filming it real time. So we can just go back to that timestamp, and then it'll show us, where the trucks or vehicles came from and where it was logged out at. And so that's how even the geofence works. I don't know if y'all remember Nipsey Hussle, but he had a geofence in his store. So when y'all use a badge to get into a building access, it's called a geofence. We can actually set up geofence areas to make sure it detects, lets us know when that occurs. So that's one way that you protect your natural resources. Like, I don't know if y'all realize, but most countries, the most value is the actual natural resources. That's why that's why the Congo is so valuable. All the technology in our laptops, our cell phones, you know, how we make the world run, this is coming from the Congo. That's why it's so important for us to have systems like this in place that work for us. Because with manpower, especially when you want to be efficient and you don't want to spend a lot of your resources, and even having people out there protecting natural resources like that, it does have a cost. I've been places where I almost got shot out of an area because the resources in those areas aren't there's war occurring on the ground for those natural resources. So one way that you protect human life is use the GI system and let it monitor the natural resources for you. The same with the water, and any other, as forests call them cash crops, but you can have them monitor those crops for you, and anytime anything occurs, it's detected and it reports it to you. And then we can even track as far as we create tools. When COVID-19 occurred, we created these dashboards to track rates of spread and hospitalizations and things. You can do that same thing with mining resources in
On
forests.
that, I want to just show a quick little piece of a video. It's an older piece, but everybody here is benefiting from this mining, which is both legal and illegal, artisanal and state backed. Um, got the exact numbers, but the nation of Rwanda exports more coltan than any other nation on the planet, but it doesn't own any of that coltan. It comes out of Congo. So what we're doing here too is to provide resources and information so that we can actually understand how those resources are being expropriated, stolen. And so James, this really helpful. I just want to share just a little quick piece here, and then we'll come back. Just showing you what it looks like. Cobalt pipeline. This is just a story that you can go back. You can go back and access from Washington Post, but it's covered by a lot of other places and players. And I just want us to, really appreciate um, and understand that we don't have to accept like a policy picture which basically ignores Africa, because Africa is relevant for all of us every single day. You take that coltan out of your laptop, your phones, and you will not be in touch with whoever you're trying to get in touch with. So what do we do? That's the question. What do we do? And as students, how can we actually help to set up some research partnerships that will address some of these issues? Address some of these issues. Okay. All right. Just wanted to just go back. Just wanted to just take us down into that little mind space. But I'll stop right there. Go ahead, Tristan. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Professor Patterson, for being so detailed with your responses and whatnot, and showing us all the ways that I would say GIS can be implemented and be helpful. So my next question is, how do you think local communities and policymakers can leverage GIS data to make informed decisions to promote sustainable development?
There's a I don't know. Can I share my screen on here?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Here, I'll stop sharing right there.
I recently worked on a project, and an example is like here in Atlanta. Um, we have, our population, I can't think if it's like 48% African American or Moorish. Um, but we have these huge parks, and some of them are right in the backyards of underserved communities, and they're underutilized. So Atlanta's trying to figure out, because you got Centennial Park, you got Piedmont Park. These are where some of the biggest concerts in the state occur, right? And those times it's probably utilized in that way. Um, but then there are other times when it's not utilized. And so what I did was I built what we call it's called a level of service analysis is what we called it. But ultimately the
James,
goal.
you have your microphone on?
No, it's on.
Okay, good.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I think so.
Okay. So, um, what ended up happening was we built something called a level of service analysis, and we pretty much gave every park a score. And that score is based off social economics. It's based off a diversity index for 2023, 2028. Um, it's based on access to a park within 10-minute walk, and then it's also size of the park. And so when you look at those different factors, you're given a score. And I'm gonna share my screen so we can all see what I'm talking about.
And you're sharing your screen?
I'm sharing now. Share.
There we go.
Okay. So this is something that I will request to be able to to be able to share with you all. Um, but it's exploring park accessibility and acreage in Atlanta. And so I'll kind of run through it quickly. But if you look at, again, this is why GIS is so important, because we can talk like I'm guessing, telling you what the demographics are. The data doesn't. I ain't gonna say it doesn't, but we have data. We know the source of the data, and so when you look at it, you have when it comes to accessibility of parks, pretty much white communities have the best access to the largest parks, and they have sidewalks, corridors, there are even trails that connect parks. So when you're going back to talking about policy and policymakers, this is what a policymaker needs. If I just come tell you my opinion, it's like, okay, that sounds good. I hear you, but I need some data to back up what it is you're actually telling me. And so um, when we start looking at the data, 77% of Atlanta residents live within a 10-minute walk of park. Residents in residents in neighborhoods that are residents in neighborhoods that are predominantly inhabited by people of color have access to 12% less parks per person compared to the city's average. 47% less than those in predominantly white neighborhoods. So that already shows you there's a huge disparity. If you're Indian, if you're African American, you have 47% access to parks and in especially large parks. And so that's why the data matters. And individuals in low income neighborhoods have access to 4% less park space, 35% less than those in high income neighborhoods. And so there's a lot of just different um, disparities that we talk about in here. And so equity, communities, investments, access. And so what I wanted to do is start giving y'all an example of some of the maps. And this is the part of GIS that to me is really dynamic, is you can start visualizing it. So if you zoom in here, these purple spaces are pretty much the roads that supply MARTA stations. And then the blue areas are the actual parks. And so what you can do is eventually, I'll go to one of the other maps. So these maps are interactive. What you can actually end up doing is looking at race in some of these maps. It may take a second to load because I'm using my cell phone. Internet. Okay, so as you zoom in here, yeah, I'm gonna show you a different one. Okay, cool. This is a better example. The level of score analysis is telling you, hey, if it's a one, it is either a really large park with poor access, or it has really small parks with poor access. And those are the areas that we need to spend our time, money, our resources, and focusing on. And to just tell you that, it's okay, but then if you want to look at the actual population demographics, you can just click on the map. And so let's look at one of these, that are number one, and we can actually see what the racial demographic of it is. Okay, so this area has almost 5,000 people.
I knocked you off. My apologies.
No worries.
Could you share your screen again?
Yep. No. Stop sharing.
It's kind of not get back up there, but
You all right?
Zoom doesn't like multiple sign-ins from different devices like this.
Yeah, tell me about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So this one tells you again, we're talking about, you can't see it.
It's on Zoom, but we don't see it here. So for some reason we need to it's on the Zoom, but we should be able to see it on here.
On this computer.
Can you see it on your screen?
Yeah.
It's on here. You share?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we can still see what it is real quick. And then is it on PowerPoint?
I can send the link.
No, because it's working, but it's the audio. I mean, the in-person folks can't see it.
Let me start. I'll try it one more time.
And while James is doing that, we do have our special guest, Mr. Samuel Yagase, joining us from Kinshasa. Brother Samuel, are you in Kinshasa right now?
Yeah, yeah. I left Kisangani and right now I'm in Kinshasa. I left the eastern part of the Congo where, which is facing the very hard situation. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had two big disadvantage this evening. First of all, the quality of the connection, and then the lack of electricity. I'm just using torch. I'm just using torch.
Tristan,
there is no electricity.
Okay, ready?
All right, so
And if y'all take just a couple minutes and ask a question for Samuel, and maybe Brian.
all right, so the question was just essentially how can governments use GIS to prioritize funding and address some of the issues that they're facing. So this map again is it's a score we developed, and when you look at the score, it's looking at access. But if you click on it's an interactive map. So if you click on any of these areas, it'll give you information. How many households are there? How many people in each household? What's the income? And that's how we're using this to verify that these are underserved communities. You got people who make two, three, $400,000 in Atlanta, and what the household income is. And so, all this data lets you know that information. And like I said, I'm gonna verify that I can share this with y'all, and y'all can kind of come look at this, and it'll make a lot more sense. But it's telling you the population, the race, the ethnicity, the income of the households, the educational attainment. There's just a lot of data that's associated with, and again, this is how the government can then come back and verify, whatever questions they are asking. And so this is just a really good example of that. And the last thing I'll show you is we were talking about conservation. So one of the things they were asking me was, hey, how can we find areas of high biodiversity within our city? And then, once we find those areas, how can we then decide if we're going to purchase those areas or not? So I brought up the same level of score analysis in there. You see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this map. And then anything that's like pink or not necessarily pink, well, pink or navy blue or any shade of blue, those are your high biodiversity areas. So anything that's a 1 or a 2 has a low score. So we'll go in and find one of those areas. So for instance, this area, it'll pop back up in a second, has a 1. And if you can kind of see along this area that has a 1, you can see that these corridors, are blue, pink. So those areas are biodiversity areas. Then if you zoom really closely,
Lots of wildlife.
yeah.
Okay.
So wildlife,
Wildlife.
plant life, species richness is what we call it, but those are very diverse areas. And so those areas we want to protect, and turn them into class 1 airsheds, don't put roads in them, things of that nature. And then
At around 3 o'clock in the morning, I could hear some coyotes howling. I like laughing. That's real. I like it. But biodiversity. Go ahead, bro.
That's a great example. And then you got the water over there and everything. So, and that's why GIS is so important, because when you see something real life, then we can go validate it, or go track it on the ground. And so that being said, the last thing that you're supposed to be able to see, and it may take a little bit because we're looking at all the data at one time, is parcel layers that I'll bring into it. And once you bring those parcel layers into it, then you're able to actually see who owns it. It might be a park, it might be owned by the city East Point already, and vice versa. But from there, you know who to contact to decide how much the property value is, and if you want to purchase it, how to go from there. So again, this whole thing, the whole point, guys, you do not have to talk to me about it. It's a tool that's a communication tool. You can come to me as an architect, but I've already laid all the information and the data out within the system.
And each one of those pixels is about what size in terms of geographic area? Like a block is it about? I mean, you don't have to, pull it out. I'm just wondering, given like the size of Congo or North Kivu and South Kivu, I mean, like, are you just basically taking a spoonful of data, or is that? I saw East Point. What size of those big?
So okay, that's a good question. It just varies. So like how you said you saw East Point, right?
Mm-hmm.
These pixels. So that whole green space is literally, I said, hey, show me this data only for the entire city of Atlanta. So it's a huge area. That's what scale is what you're talking about. And that's why I like the parcel data matters, because once you zoom into an area, I can tell you, oh, this parcel is an acre of land. And then that kind of gives you the scale that you're asking about, because the pixels will vary. And it'll come up. Somebody else he's asking, saying, oh, kind of, there we go. So now you're looking at the actual parcels.
Oh, okay.
And that answers your question about scale.
Right.
And so, yeah.
All right, so Tristan, we could go ahead. James, this is fascinating. You can see, literally see the potential of how we can use this to engage and support Congolese organizations. What we want to do next is actually transition and speak with the leader of one of our Congolese organizations, Mr. Samuel Ugase, our very, very good brother from Isangi in the big city of Kisangani, but now he's coming to us from Kinshasa. Samuel, can you hear us? And James,
Hello?
let's we can switch. Would you pull up? There he is. Good evening. You should be. Your mic is muted. And we might switch.
Yeah, right.
Tristan, are you on Zoom?
No, I was gonna. Mr. Yakashi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Here's
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, Mr. Yagase, my question for you is, with the reality of the current climate emergency and new global focus on Congo's carbon bomb and the peatlands, what fast shift in power do you think needs to take place for there to be a true collaboration for climate solutions and mitigation?
And
If you can hear me.
Samuel, could you hear that? Tristan.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear properly. If you can repeat the question, please.
Absolutely. Can you hear me now?
Be very just.
You can hear me, Mr. Yagase?
He should be. There's a little delay.
Okay. So my question again is, given the reality of the climate emergency and a new global focus on Congo's carbon bomb, what fast shift in power do you think needs to take place for there to be true collaboration on climate solutions? Technical difficulty.
Brother Samuel, can you repeat the question again, please? Sorry for the quality of the connection.
No, it's not you. I say it's on this end too.
Can you hear me?
Just ask. What does NGO GOVA do, and what are they doing today?
Okay. Mr. Gosling, my question is, what does NGA GOVA do, and what are you guys actively doing today? Yeah, you might have.
I did in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, we as Gova, Eastern territory about 3 decades, and now we are part of
So one of y'all has to turn it down.
Do you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you, but we just have an echo. That's all. Samuel, go ahead. You can continue.
Yeah, I was saying that we are working for GOVA, which is a local NGO based in Isangi territory, which is also a member of the Passenger Coalition, which is working for to raise the voice of local people, the indigenous local communities, and the indigenous people, to give them more space, consideration, and leadership, and the promote their leadership in terms of protecting the forests, the rivers, and the biodiversity in the Congo Basin rainforest. But for the community, we are trying to promote self-reliance, at the community level by promoting solidarities, at all levels. Yeah, we have been facing the sleeping sickness epidemics, and now, according to what is happening in the Congo, as you know, the eastern part is in trouble, facing the armed conflict with rebels and so on, and people are moving from the eastern to the western part. Like in Kisangani now, people are coming from because Kisangani belongs to the Chop province, which is a neighboring, province to North Kivu, where Goma is. So people are still coming, and we are getting more and more internal refugees. So, yeah, instead of relying completely to the big NGOs and so on, what we are doing is to promote solidarity at the local level, through churches, schools, universities, to see how we can support
Right.
all those people who are being forced to leave their land, to leave their space, to leave their villages, to leave their home, to leave everything and become internal refugees.
So, Tristan, I'm gonna ask a question. Samuel, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good, good. So I have a two-part question in terms of supporting the work that NGO Goga is doing. If think about the immediate, what we can do to support, and as people move away from the Kivus, away from Ituri, away from South Kivu, North Kivu, into Chopo, as you were saying, what can we do to help support you and your organization? That's the first part. And then second, long term, what type of research do we need to be doing to actually support Congolese people as a whole and the whole nation? So the first part is what can we do right now? And then what type of research projects do you want us to join you in supporting your work?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I think your support could be critical, especially at 2 or even 3 levels. The first one is the emergency situation. People are coming in terms of hundreds of thousands. They are coming in and they have nothing. They lost almost everything. They don't have food. They don't have medicines. They don't have clothes and so on. And most of them are sleeping like on the ground. So the emergency, what we can do for them is trying to give what is the basic needs. And the basic needs to me or to us is food and medicines, as they are, most of them are being sick. And so just the basic needs, food, medicines, and yeah, is especially food and medicines. Giving that support. The situation in the Congo is, to me, it's really, really unjust because the country has been facing that situation more than 3 decades. And when we look at the situation, when we look at the international community, I was 2 or 3 months ago, I was in the United States, and I was telling people in Atlanta or San Francisco, Los Angeles, of at least and you are well informed about what is happening in Ukraine, what is happening in the Palestine, but we as Congolese, we don't understand the silence, about the situation in the Congo. The international community keeps quiet. Everyone keeps quiet, as if Congolese were like, insects or animals to be killed any time by anyone. So it's really very, very sad. I think urgently you to support internal refugees coming in. And to speak of the situation of the DRC, it's not normal for the European Union to sign contract with Rwanda about the strategic minerals when Rwanda doesn't have that minerals. So it's a way of sending Rwanda or Rwandese army to go and take those strategic minerals from the Congo and kill and rape. And so we can't understand that, how European Union can sign agreements about strategic minerals with Rwanda when Rwanda doesn't have those strategic minerals. For us, we can't understand that. So I think at your level, you can help. You can help the Congo, you can help all those people who are suffering, who are facing that tragedy, because it's a shame. To me, I can say that it's really a shame. It's a great failure of our humanity. So the situation Congolese are facing, it's unjust. I think at your level you can do a lot to make it known.
Brother Yagase, thank you. So two things, just a quick response. One of the things that we're working on doing is to stand up research projects. So on Democracy Now! This morning was Kambale, Brother Kambale Musabuli. So he has the Congo Research Institute. And we have also here in, oh, there you go. We have also, sorry. Turn the camera. We have also the Congo Studies Association that's based here, at least our leader of it is based here in Atlanta. So we have to do that. We have to stand up a research institute that's going to fuel policy. So when President Trump, he just cut USAID, folks from Congo, literally from Goma, literally had to get on just the first flight they could and pull out because the United States basically showed they were not going to support, and the M23 saw that. They saw that. They see there's no holes. No holes. So we have to do research, but not just research, but also stand in policy. So we'll continue to talk with you about how we can offer immediate support through Friends of the Congo. But even I think the bigger thing is for African American organizations, Black Voters Matter, the Black Democrats, the Black Democratic Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus, the Progressive Caucus, we have to hold them to account. We have to basically ask the question, what are you going to do? Here's what you can do. But that has to be based on research. And so I really think we're going to be able to make some impacts there. We want to ask a question, if we can. Is Sabayo still there? Is Arlene, are you still there? We had a question about climate finance modeling and whether that's actually consistent with like what we're trying to do in terms of offering support for Congolese solutions to Congolese problems. Could you speak about that? And does that make sense in terms of climate finance modeling?
Sorry, could you elaborate more on that? What you mean by financial modeling and kind of could you elaborate more on the question?
Oh, well, yes. Carbon credit modeling, is that a potential support to this pathway to peace and sustainable development that we're trying to move toward, or at least to be able to see. I think working with Congolese communities, African Americans, we have to be able to think in somewhat independently, but using every tool in the toolbox. So what is your work? If you could describe your work, your research, and how it applies, talk about how it applies to Congo.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do work on carbon markets and basically climate impact of climate change impact in Africa. That's where my research focuses. And recently, for the past year, I've been working on how uh, climate finance mechanisms can enhance peace in conflict-affected states. I, I'm not sure if I could say it would be like an immediate solution, but every little thing we do, I guess, kind of moves the needle. So that's where, from the perspective I'm working from. And my work on the carbon markets generally I've seen that kind of there is less projects in when there is a conflict in a country, there is usually like less projects associated with that. And what do projects bring? They do bring like income to the communities. They do build infrastructure. So if we see less projects, we see less of those impacts. Hence, it's not they can contribute to sustainable development in the conflict affected states. So what I'm working on is kind of trying to rethink about methodologies that could incorporate conflict affected states and kind of remove the barriers in accessing carbon markets and other climate finance mechanisms. So that's what I've been working on. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions.
All right, so we can transition to have questions from our audience, from folks who are online, but we're going to privilege our folks who are here in person first. If you would, if you have any questions or suggestions, comments, anyone? John? Oh,
I got you. Can you hear me?
you're going to have to speak up. Yeah. And make sure you specify who you're asking.
I got you. So my question is more so a general question for for the panel. So I'm currently working with this organization called Students for Nuclear Disarmament, where we talk about a bunch of different topics of just like nuclear disarmament, getting rid of nuclear arms and things and such, and tying that into these different interconnected issues like climate change and land injustice. I was wondering, what would you say would be the best way that we as students can go about supporting what you're doing from a nuclear stance, given how historically the Congo was one of those areas where uranium was being mined for the creation of these atomic bombs?
You're directing that to your docents.
To everyone.
Okay. Samuel, you mind if I kind of jump in, and then you can sharpen the edge of the spear in a way for what I give. What our student John just asked was about the way that Congo's resources have been used to create the nuclear part of the U.S. military and the Western military. What we know from the little bit, John, that of research that I've done is the U.S. by 1965 took out of mines like the Shinkolokwe mine about 70%, this is 65 to 70% of the uranium that was needed. Now, why did they do that? They did it so that they could prevent Russia and China from getting access to it, so they couldn't develop as strong of a nuclear arsenal. They still have nuclear arsenals. Russia tests their nuclear arsenal, but the U.S. has done more nuclear testing than any other nation combined. I mean, by factors of 10 to 100. I mean, we were letting off bombs in the Bikini Atoll, out in the Pacific, in the desert. Did y'all know that they actually, even in 1964, let off a nuclear bomb in the upper atmosphere? I mean, so this is the United States. This is part of the public record. So just to see what would happen. So we're dealing with a civilization that doesn't really have a lot of limits. So when I listen to Brother Samuel and I hear the Basanja principles, these principles of acting in accord with nature, of finding a right balance with nature, finding, communities living in harmony with nature, we are not dealing with that type of civilization. And Donald Trump is the best embodiment of that because he doesn't have any real limits in terms of, so there's no way we can talk about this without talking about the political structures that actually empower the devastation of Congo's climate and the people. So it's not just the climate, whether we talk about carbon credits, literally mapping, to me, one of the most beautiful things is actually trying to make sure that we're clear on how this is affecting human populations, Congolese populations. So anybody want to address that? John, I know you have a project.
So, yeah, and the reason why I ask this is because currently in March, we're getting ready to go to the United Nations, and we've been working with students on trying to develop projects around these intersections so that once we get to the stage, we're able to bring these different topics up and see how we can build support in furthering these causes. So that said, when you were speaking specifically about how Rwanda is signing treaties or contracts saying that they'll be taking these resources away when in reality they don't even have the resources to give away, that's just some of the different things that we could bring to the minds of the students who don't even know about these different issues. And similarly, like a few days ago, we just had a meeting with students in Japan. We have found out that as the United States amount of nuclear arms is going down, the amount of arms being ready for use is actually going up. So it's also painting to the picture of we thinking that things are actually going about and being changed in reality. The time for using these things are more so coming up type of situation. So, but in terms of the carbon footprint, Miss Aline, could you speak more to what that is and a way how that could be used as another form of currency? Because in this nuclear discussion, what we've been realizing is another reason why people are so big on it is because of the economic impact that could have. So how could the carbon structure that you're talking about be used as maybe a form of replacement for that currency?
So sorry about it because I'm on Zoom, so it's kind of hard to hear the questions correctly and kind of lost track. Could you summarize the question again for me?
Yeah, just very
Okay. So basically, how could the carbon model that you were talking about using with the carbon currency be used, carbon credits be used as another form of currency and building wealth, I'd say, for these different countries?
Okay, I will just repeat the question to make sure I heard correctly. So you asked how could carbon credits be used as a currency for development?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Sure, I'm not sure. Like, I don't think I'll touch at all on nuclear, anything nuclear, because I'm not familiar with the topic as such. I haven't done research on that, and I think it's kind of a high expert area right now. And yeah, I could send resources on people to talk to, but right now I don't have any ideas on that. But on the carbon credits themselves, the way it works is basically you like big companies like Microsoft pay a certain project to be built in, let's say, like a developing country or any other places and reduce emissions, and they could claim those emissions. So basically, the finances are flowing into those communities. So that's how it kind of acts as a currency. And it's not a currency on its own, but it can bring in the money. Does that make sense?
Most definitely. I got you.
Yeah, so it's now definitely acting as a currency in one way or another.
a quick question. Aline, are there any cryptocurrencies that are pegged to carbon credits?
I've heard of it. I've heard that there are a lot of people working on that, but I'm not sure what project specifically, but there is definitely something about that.
Okay. Just seems like, you know,
I know, like in renewable energy spaces, they use, they're trying to tap into blockchain in order to make it like a seamless from the time that you create the renewable energies to the time that you push it to the markets. And that's kind of where carbon credits are connected, because it's happening so fast and it's happening real time that if you had it's kind of tough because they didn't really say crypto, but they use blockchain and crypto, like synonymous. So it's not a far off thing. And then you got certain countries that are receiving, the leaders are receiving their pay in crypto. So,
Okay.
Just FYI, guys, we will be diving into this topic more in detail on the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday panel sessions. So please join those.
I didn't see Brother Samuel say anything about the first part, or Ghazi, when you're talking about the resources, and that's what I want to defer. But as far as the resources go, I mean, that's where mapping is probably the most beneficial. Is like I know Dr. Harris was asking, we were looking at like Antigua and Barbuda, and so there are certain layers. Like I was sharing you really quickly, there are certain layers. Number one, you need to be able to articulate it to the government that you're working with, and I think that would be the challenging part in the Congo. I'm not an expert on the Congo, but I know at the present time, with Rwanda and being almost like a boots on the ground force for people that are colonizing the area, that's the tough part because they know the resources and where they're at and the financial gain that they're receiving from extracting, stripping from the people. So if you were working with the United Nations, being able to, so this is a map of different regions in the Congo, being able to pinpoint where it's occurring at in the Congo, what exact resources, financial value of these resources, and then how it's crippling the local economies and the people. One of the things when it comes to endangered species are our people and our culture. As you extract natural resources and then they're depleted, our cultural practices are then endangered and eventually extinguished, from a community. So even when you go to the United Nations, you make sure that you make that clear. But the mapping part is really important because it visualizes, the actual impact of it.
I appreciate that question.
We have some brief materials, and I know you're doing research too. So I want to just again, do we have any other questions or comments, observations before we get started?
I think you answered my question. I wanted to know how GIS can help with what's going on in Congo now. And James addressed how mapping the resources and things like that.
I didn't know that. Okay, hello.
Nice to meet you.
All right, very good to meet you. I'm Dr. I know you're not my student, but I feel like. All right, so I do want to say the next step though is to do similar to what John has done, is to actually think about research teams. Tristan, you didn't get a chance to share your research project.
I did.
You did?
Yeah, I spoke about it.
I know you spoke about it, but did you show it?
Oh, no, I didn't show it, but I also may have some difficulty doing that because I still can't get it.
Don't worry about it. Yeah. So just again, to reiterate it about the connection between Gullah and I started to say Haitian, but Congolese land loss. This is something that we need to study in real time because a lot of times we make the claim, say, oh, well, we're in different situations. No, you're not. No, you're not. We are delanded, but there's political and economic and financial models that used to gentrify and take land from us. Heirs property being like a stopgap measure. I know a lot of people in the low country in different areas, they swear by heirs property, but it poses a real threat. In Congo, is a real threat. 3,000 people killed in the last 2 weeks in North Kivu alone. And that's just what is recorded. That's not like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a lot going on there. And, so I want us to think about how do we form these research teams based upon our interests. And then again, what you're hearing and what you're reading, you're probably reading about what's happening in Congo and in the world. And it's all connected. Donald Trump, Elon Musk is doing similar. Elon Musk is advocating for white South Africans. And he's basically saying, we need to do whatever we need to do to support the white South Africans because they're poor white South Africans. But it's a similar logic that's being used in Kigali. We got to protect our brothers and sisters. And then Uganda saying the same thing. The Bahama people, they say, the Bahama people in trouble. Everybody's in trouble in Congo. Every single ethnic group in the East is in trouble in Congo. And it's unfair to say, well, you're going and you're going to just protect this one group. Come on, man. I mean, let's, you know what I'm saying? I mean, let's not pretend. Let's stop pretending. Just because we got a liar in the White House, we don't have to lie to ourselves. So what can we do? What can we do?
I think if y'all work and doing this, especially if you've been having a passion for it, the population, it's really important to track that either growth or decline when you're speaking to them because, you look at here in the United States, there was a point in time we owned the entire thing. We are the original people. Guess what percentage would you guess that we own in the United States right now?
Like maybe 4%.
Less than 1%. Less than 1%. So, I mean, and so what's going on in Congo right now is an example of like you have the opportunity now to put a stop to it by being able to take these resources and work with the people now. It's time.
And I think too, I'm gonna say this. It's really critical that we have Rwandan and Ugandan partners in the research. Because if it's just African Americans and Congolese people, they're gonna be like, oh, but we are Congolese. Let's be honest. The DNA doesn't lie, the history doesn't lie. But we need Rwandan research partners. And we've made contact with some of them, but it's we got to do this based upon research and evidence and history, not just like feeling, not just I think that's really, really important because folks who are in these offices of power, they have vested interests, but it's not trickling down to the average Rwandan person. And the people I talk to who are in Goma, they be traveling. Before the conflict, they would travel. They would be across borders in Burundi, in Rwanda, on business. There's the trade that's constantly going back and forth. There should be peace, but let me stop. I'm just saying there are vested interests that are not the people, but they are cutting deals with the European Union for these raw minerals and not producing a damn bit of it. So how can you do that? You can only do that when you build a society that's based upon an ethnic or a racial myth. That's what we have here in America. So we should be able to recognize game. I recognize an ethnic lie when I see one. I'm sorry. You gotta say the truth. I'm gonna shut up. Tristan closes out, bro. John, you want to say anything about the rest of the week?
Yeah, just this is really considered the kickoff panel for the rest of the week this week. So thank you, Professor Livingston, for really setting the tone. Thank you to all the speakers. Um, Leading up to this conference, Professor Livingston and I have been working with Aline on a research paper, which we intend to finish at the end of this conference and produce in the way of a report. And we really want to start shaping the future of our service learning projects through African Awareness Week on the continent. And this is a very meaningful part of that dialogue. So please stay engaged for the rest of the week. Like I said, this sets the tone. On Wednesday, we'll be talking about sustainable methods for developing battery manufacturing. There's some Morehouse alumni who are working in partnership with the University of Johannesburg on research projects to do sustainable methods for developing batteries. That's the solution to this conversation we're having right now. On Thursday, we'll be talking about sustainable methods for harvesting water. This is service learning project sponsored by QSci-Fi. Students are going to get a chance to travel to Ghana and work on that project with CSR Ghana. And then on Friday, we're going to be talking about sustainable financing methods for solar specifically, but harnessed and centered around the data centers, which you're seeing popping up all over the country. These panels are going to be hosted in Professor Bloomer's class. All of his classes are part of the Environmental and Social Justice program, which Professor Vereen is the director for. He's here. So please stay engaged, students, and thank you, Professor Livingston, for your leadership. And we're hoping that this is something we can build on year over year going forward.
Noah, would you mind putting my email in the chat?
Yeah, for sure.
For anybody who's online, if you are interested in being in touch and supporting
Your
and
Morehouse
working
email,
with
right?
students, Brother Yagase, we are in touch all the time, but we're going to continue to turn to you and do our part by doing more research and finding out how we can change policy. Because to me, the big failure is not having a Black policy position on Congo, which will be different from the Democrats, different from Republicans, but there should be an African American policy position on Congo that's very, very clear, that's principled about how we relate to all Africa. Because that's all we're asking for is equal treatment where people can have their autonomy, land sovereignty respected. So, Brother Sammy, thank you for being here. John, thank you for being here. Tristan, I'm talking over you. My apologies, brother. Thank the whole audience for being here. Brother James, Professor Patterson, thank you for your expertise and continued willingness to join us and to support the work we're trying to do here. Thank you, man. Appreciate y'all.